You're watching another Nerd Stalker interview. Welcome to another Nerd Stalker interview. This is Greg Gloria, aka Social Greg on Twitter for the Nerd Stalker Media Network. Today, we look into agile thinking. We go in depth into an article on Examiner.com titled Four Agile Thinking Skills for Entrepreneurs with Taffy Williams, Examiner writer and entrepreneur and co-founder and CEO of Colonial TDC. He will discuss his thoughts on agile thinking and how that helps entrepreneurs. And no, we're not talking about to be the ultimate scrum master. We're talking about entrepreneurial agile thinking. So anyway, good morning, Taffy, and welcome to our May startup blog for 2014, live from North Carolina.
Hi, how are you doing?
Hey, good. It's been a while. Sorry about that. I've been a little
Yeah,
bit busy, and but I think this is a good timing because we'll talk about a little bit of a surprise at the end of this. But about agile thinking and what you're doing with that. So let's get started. Let's go through the four agile thinking skills you feel entrepreneurs should have, and let's talk about the first one, which is called keep up the pressure. So let's talk about that.
yeah. I mean, it's really easy to get into a business. The business could be operating normally. It could be, working quite well. It might be not working well. It's easy to get into a rut and continue to do the same thing day in and day out. And that's not really that's okay for keeping status quo, but if you want to build a business, one of the things that I think is kind of important is to always be looking for unique ways to grow and executing strategies that would help you move in that direction. Finding ways to encouraging your team to help move in that direction. Always being aware of things around you and keeping up the pressure to move the business, in a growth pattern.
I see. Yeah, it seems like people like a little bit of pressure. I know in school, a little bit of pressure on those exams were always helpful in motivating me to do something a little bit better, a little bit, focus a little bit more, stuff
Yeah,
like
but
that.
people kind of respond if you keep the pressure up and people are always responding by looking around, being aware of the surroundings and looking for ways, opportunities that might come up. They'll do that if the pressure is there. I know even for myself in my current business, if I don't really step up and do things, I'm happy to sit around and do nothing. I sit here and we'll talk to, and play on the computer and do stuff that doesn't take me anywhere. It's easy. It's really easy
No,
to
no,
go nowhere.
no, no. They call it ADD, but when I think it in human beings, we just fill in things with our time.
Yeah.
I agree with that one. That's interesting. Keep up the pressure is one of the agile thinking elements for entrepreneurs. And let's go to the second one called adjust plans as needed. Yeah, I mean, I was a project manager, program manager, product manager, and I always liked I like this because I think what it is that we always plan for success, but we adjust for failure is one of my mottos. But let's talk more about this in what the way you think entrepreneurs should think about.
Well, it's in a lot of this stuff comes out of me being trained as a scientist and so you can lay, and I was describing to you a little bit earlier, laying out an experimental protocol to define how I was going to lay out the remainder of my work towards a PhD, and I had a key experiment that had to be performed. And it was only after a unique event took place that made me realize that I had to adjust the plans because what I was doing wasn't working.
Mm.
And that happens in business. You can lay out a really fantastic business plan, but if you are not focused on things around you, you're going to miss something. No plan is perfect from day one. You could be traveling to go see your grandma somewhere and find out that the bridge is out. Okay, you got to adjust. You're not going to go that way. I mean, I tried to go to the airport the other day, and as I'm crossing over the bridge, getting ready to come down on the highway, it says I noticed it was backed up for something like 15 miles because I could see pretty far down the road. And I know where it was backed up because this was race weekend and the road was backed up. So I had to adjust my plan and go an alternate route. It had taken me a little bit longer, but not as long as if I'd gotten stuck in that traffic. So in business, if you are not continually looking and finding ways to improve your outcome and adjusting your plan as needed, sometimes it'll take you longer. Sometimes you're going to get stuck. Sometimes, it can lead to failure. But you want to be aware and pay attention and adjust as needed.
Yeah, agile thing is almost like a certain flexibility. I like the way you put it as kind of agile thinking, but it's a flexibility that you have to have, I think, to get around problems or to recognize and get around problems, I guess is what you were trying to say earlier, right?
We use the word agile thinking, and originally it was going to be called flexipreneur, but since you can't really do a good Google search on flexipreneur and find anything, it got adjusted to agile thinking.
I see. No, I think the sight part is very important as your example of looking down the road and the ability to quickly identify actions, I guess, is another thing, right?
Right, absolutely.
Yeah, so, okay, let's go to number 3 here, which is for agile thinking for entrepreneurs. It's try something different.
There's an old saying, stupidity is doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting a different result.
Yeah, I've been stupid many times.
Sometimes you have to try something different in order to get a different result.
Right.
That came up very early on in my scientific career. As I told you, I was worried just before we got online. I was doing experimentation, and it was important for my research. And I kept running the experiment the way it was described in the literature, and it just wasn't working, and I couldn't get it to work. And this was a key part of what was going to lead into my research for my dissertation. So I walked into my thesis advisor and said, "This thing's not working. Give me another project." And he looked up at me and just off the cuff said, "You didn't do it right. Go back and make it work." So it took me a while to go back and figure out how to do it, but by going back and varying what I was doing, it eventually worked, and that then led into all of the key things that led into my dissertation. About 6 publications came out of it. It was a major event, but it became part of what I learned that needed to be done. And sometimes I get beat up upon by my wife by consistently looking for ways to make things work whenever it's just like it's not working. It's like even in fixing things in the house. I was working on a sink once trying to replace a trap in an old house. I went out to Lowe's and came back with the parts and went to put them on, and they didn't fit. And it says, "Oh crap, they don't sell these parts anymore." So now I'm trying to figure out how to jury rig something to make it work. And so that's all part of trying something different and finding that the plans that you originally set out, the easy as it might have been, isn't going to work. And it really does take some thinking and looking and trying to put something together, because life's like a puzzle. You could be missing some of the pieces. So you better figure out what you're going to put in those holes to finish the puzzle.
Well, it's interesting that example you just gave, because you seem to be going around in circles around this problem. And it was just this conversation with your professor that seemed to just send you in a different direction, it seemed.
Absolutely, but that happens in business. I mean, you're out trying to raise money, you're beating your head against a wall, and and you're not paying attention to something else that might work. You could be trying to develop a product to sell to a market without paying attention and realize that the market you're going into, they don't want it. If you're not paying attention and making the correct and the kind of thinking that leads you to where you're going to get a success, you're making yourself in a position where instead of being as successful as you could be, maybe you're less successful, maybe you fail, maybe something else happens. And it's this agile thinking, I think, is an important part that can improve one's ability to be successful.
Oh, that's great. If you just joined us, we're talking to Taffy Williams, entrepreneur and writer on Examiner.com. He's talking about agile ways of thinking for entrepreneurs, or 4 agile thinking skills for entrepreneurs, based on an article on examiner.com. So we'll go down to the fourth one. Uh, let's talk about get feedback. So that's an interesting one. When I read that the other day, I was reflecting back on a lot of things that I need a lot of feedback on. I never got it. So
Well, it's extremely helpful. One of the first things to be aware of is you're just not taught everything in school. I was trained as a scientist, not business person. Okay, so I wasn't taught business. It wasn't part. So in working within the business community initially and starting to become acquainted with it, and then gradually you're getting into running businesses, you realized that, okay, I wasn't taught this, I didn't know it, but there are a lot of people that have gone through similar events. They may have failed and learned the hard way. All of my training came from what they call a school of hard knocks. Yeah, I learned the hard way.
yeah, I've been there.
Okay, I've had successes and I've had failures. Some of the failures I've had are things you would never expect to see from most people. Because I handled turnarounds for a long time, and it becomes very difficult to go through these events. To go and ask others and talk about ways to solve problems means that you can now capitalize on their knowledge, the things they've learned through failures, things they've learned through school, and by getting feedback and getting other advice, you're able to try to integrate that into an approach that works for you. You can't necessarily take what someone tells you verbatim and apply it to your situation, but by hearing enough and figuring out how to be agile and make use of that information to fit your model, you might be able to develop a path or two that would overcome whatever problems you're running into.
Right.
So
Yeah. No, I mean, I think excuse me here. I think the issue is that I think some of us, well, I think a lot of us, really not some, a lot of us refuse to give in to that asking for advice, because we also think of that as, if we go back to the previous one, failure. Right.
It's people are reluctant to ask for advice because first they may believe they know everything. They're
Right.
not agile. They're not realizing they don't. You don't know their
Right.
situation. They may be embarrassed to ask because they don't want someone to know that they don't know the answer to it, because maybe they feel like they're expected to. There's lots of reasons why people won't ask. There's only one really good reason to ask, because it might help you.
Yeah, absolutely, and then that's the best reason in the world, I feel. So,
Yeah.
so anyway, no, thanks. I like, if, like I said, if you just joined us, we're interviewing Taffy Williams, entrepreneur and staff writer for the Examiner.com, and we're talking about four agile thinking ways for entrepreneurs. And anyway, I kind of want to do that as a lead-in into the next topic, which is, Taffy has talked to me about this before, but we had to keep it on wraps until he was really ready. But this is really a precursor, what we're doing here on agile thinking, for your new book, right?
Yeah, it's a book that's coming out. You can actually in Startup Blog, and actually some of the more recent articles on the Examiner, I'm starting to put links to it on Amazon. The book comes out in November, so it is available. I've actually written 4 articles now on agile thinking. They're not mirroring what's in the book. They're adding to things that might be in the book. There's a lot of really neat things that I think are going to be useful. It breaks it down into sections that are easy to digest. And the snippets that I'm putting out here on agile thinking are trying to capture stuff from my blog articles, because I've written over 300 of them, but rephrase some of those things as an agile thinking events, and make sure that people begin to realize that it's not all the planning you can do doesn't necessarily prepare you for unexpected events, and unexpected events are always coming up.
Right, right, absolutely. And then, oh, I'm really excited. I've known Taffy for a few years now, and we've talked on and off, offline, online a lot. And I'm really excited for him to have this book. So, you guys, look for his book. You can pre-order on Amazon.com, as he said, and look for the links on his startup blog. And you know, you should be able to learn a lot, as well as a lot of these little in-depth sessions we do with Taffy every month, called Startup Blog Insights. So, anyway, thanks for the interview. I appreciate it as always. And it looks like it's a nice sunny day there in North Carolina. So I want you to go enjoy that. So how can listeners get a hold of you and uh, get to know you a little bit more, Taffy?
Yeah, I enjoyed it. Thanks a lot, and look forward to talking to you later.
Yeah. So yeah, how can listeners get a hold of you on Startup Blog and
Well, first of all, I think at the bottom of the screen it shows a link to my website, colonialtdc.com, and in the upper right-hand corner of that are links to my blog, are links to the Examiner articles, and my
Yes.
photography, because I do amateur photography. I know, by the way, 90% of the photography in my blogs I shoot.
That's cool. I saw the dog one. That was pretty cool.
Well, there was
So
one with a dog with an orange ball sitting by it
yeah,
where he was not looking at the ball, and
yeah,
I talked about focus. I
yeah,
shot that.
yeah.
I shot that out on Nob Hill.
Oh, it's nice. Okay. Well, we look forward to seeing you here in San Francisco, and hopefully we'll do a live interview that way. But anyway, thank you, Taffy. That was Taffy Williams of Colonial TEC, as he just said. You catch him in the small business section of Examiner.com through the Charlotte Small Business Examiner, where he writes a lot about articles about entrepreneurship, and of course, you can catch him on his blog, a startup blog. But again, he's going to be talking more about agile thinking as a way to think about stuff, and as a precursor to his upcoming book, which I'm sure will share a lot of stories and insights about entrepreneurship, but from an agile thinking way. So anyway, thanks for joining us, everyone. This is Greg Voria, aka Social Greg, on Twitter for the Nerd Stalker Media Network, where we believe in tech, startups, design, and you. Thanks for joining us, everyone, and be careful out there.
Bye bye.
See you, Tabby.